will spend a lot of sleepless nights working, and then you get to the studio and they tell you that you have not done anything. Just may even tear up your paper and say this is nothing. You have to be mentally prepared for that. It's just a part of the course, and eventually you will get used to it. Good day, viewers. My name is Tapiwa Muzaremba, and I'm an architecture student at the University of Johannesburg in my final year. And today I just want to talk about what architecture is about and the career opportunities that stem from architecture itself. So, architecture in general is about design. It differs with institutions, but I will be talking about the architecture at the University of Johannesburg and what it is about. So, with most institutions, it's mostly between architecture being technical and architecture being more about design. So, in the University of Johannesburg is more design based as compared to being technical. So the faculty itself, named FADA, is actually, I think, is the only faculty in Southern Africa that is combined with the design faculties in universities. So the faculty at the University of Johannesburg is in the same building as it's called the Faculty of Art, Design and Architecture. So it's in the same context with the design faculties, industrial design, jewelry design, and art itself. So it's a very unique school and a very fun school as well. So going into the design part of architecture and what exactly we do. So first I will talk about just architecture in general. So architecture mostly it comes from the conceptualizing of buildings. That is when you get a design idea, and then from there you want to come up with a solid design of a building, and then from there it has a lot of processes, but I'll just skip most of them to the submission, which is called council submission, which is the most important. I'll say it's the most important part of architecture and the most boring part, which is the process of submitting your drawings to council. So with the council, I think in most countries, including South Africa and Zimbabwe as well, you cannot submit your own building plans. For you to be able to submit your own plan, you have to be a registered architect or architectural technologist, and there's a whole process that goes with that. So mostly with architecture, you have to study. For example, here in SA, you have to be a registered architect for you to be able to submit your building plans. So you have to study for your bachelor's. That is mostly 3 or 4 years. And then after doing your bachelor's, you do your honors. That is another year, and then you do your masters. After doing your masters, you have to work under under supervision from a registered architect for another 2 years for you to be a registered architect. And then it is only after those, I think it's about 7 years. After those 7 years, you will be able to be a registered architect, and then that's when you will be able to submit council drawings. So this is just to educate people, because at times people mostly think that you can just submit your drawings to the council and get them approved by yourself, which is not very factual. It has to be through an architect, and it is only through an architect that those plans get um, can get approved. And I think at times there may be shortcuts to getting that process done, but um, that process is very risky because you have to get a qualified person. I believe architects are very important. There's a lot of study that goes into designing, from site planning to site analysis and then to designing itself. Your architect is responsible for all that stuff, and then there are regulations that only your architect would know, that you wouldn't know. So just as a word of advice, I would advise everyone before designing, please go through an architect. Do not try going through the whole process yourself, as at times it may also lead to you being legally, I don't know, persecuted or something. But yeah, I would definitely advise people to always go through an architect. And then going to council submission and what it is mostly about. Council submission is your building plans are mostly drawn in a specific way that communicates to the council, and then submitting those plans to the council. And this process, it differs with different projects, but then at times it may take between a month, 2 years with some projects, and you also get a lot of rejections and having to redraw the plans and improving them. But yeah, that is just the boring side of architecture. I think as mostly I'll talk about people with degrees. You will most likely be a designer and not be involved in the submission of drawings. I think that is the more fun part of architecture, talking to the client from scratch and then turning what they think they want into what they want, designing a space and having to live through the space and seeing people going through the space and what that space in the end has become. I think that is the most beautiful part of architecture. I would say a lot of people say architects draw plans, but I say architects design, and they design spaces for people. Whatever space you are in now, I heavily think that it was designed by an architect, and there was a lot of intent behind that design. So a lot goes into the design process of architecture. And then moving into other careers that come from architecture, especially with architecture at the University of Johannesburg. The course at UJ is very broad. You can stem into, for example, photography. They teach us a lot about photography. You can stem into media. Obviously, you won't be doing it at a very professional level, but you have the basis to do filming, because we have done films, we've done podcasts, we've done interviews. So that just gives you a basis for starting that. And then you can stem into just graphic design itself. As an architect from UJ, you can do a lot of designing. You can design posters. By the time you finish your course, you will know how to design posters, you will know how to design flyers, cards. Yeah, so there's a lot that comes from the architecture of at UJ. You can also become an artist as well. This is not really my favorite topic, but they do emphasize that a lot at the University of Johannesburg. We do a lot of art, so you can also branch into that and as a new field and not even pursue architecture in the end. And then you can also pursue furniture design as well as a career. We have done furniture design, and you can pursue that as your career. And then there are other things like maybe lecturing, but obviously you will be lecturing as an architect as well. But that is just the added advantages of studying architecture at the University of Johannesburg. And then how difficult architecture is. I would say it's a very difficult course and time consuming course. It's not easy in any way. It requires a lot of adaptation. It will take a lot of your time. So if you're going to go for architecture, you need to know that you want to do this thing, and you need to know that you will definitely not have a lot of free time. This architecture is going to be your life, which is not a bad thing because architecture is very beautiful. I love architecture. Anyone who's seen a building has architecture. I think architecture is all around us. One thing that people may not know about architects is architects are also town planners as well. I think most of the towns, I think including Joburg, the basis for those designs or town planning came from architects like Corbusier. So architects plan almost every space that we live in, towns, cities. It mostly comes from the designs of architects, and then that being adapted by other different courses and then being applied. But yeah, that is mostly it about architecture. Be passionate. You have to be very resilient, and you have to be ready for the sleepless nights, man. You will spend a lot of nights awake just waking, and then the studying of the course itself is not very easy. The lecturers, I promise you, lecturers are not going to be very nice to you. You will spend a lot of sleepless nights working, and then you get to the studio and they tell you that you have not done anything. Just they may even tear up your paper and say this is nothing. You have to be mentally prepared for that. It's just a part of the course, and eventually you will get used to it. And once you get used to it, trust me, you will love it. I love what I do as an architect. I love seeing beautiful buildings. I love being in spaces designed by other architects. So yeah, man, I wish all those who wish to study architecture good luck, all the best.